Guys, magre-react na naman po tayo. Magbibigay tayo ng reaction pagkatapos natin panoorin ang video na ito. By the way, kung bago pa lang po kayo sa aking YouTube channel, please paki-support. Please like this video. Paki-subscribe po yung hindi pa nakasubscribe sa YouTube channel ko. At paki-share na rin po. At saka yung comment nyo, importante sa akin. Salamat po. Let's go!
Fombell, Pennsylvania is a small community 40 minutes north of Pittsburgh. In July of 2021, some local farmers noticed their grain silo was on its last legs. The silo had been in pretty rough shape for a while. Any day could be its last, especially if a strong gust of wind randomly blew by. So, to avoid a costly accident, our farmers took matters into their own hands. At least they knew what they were doing. You can see where part of the silo was cut like a tree to ensure it fell in the right direction. And we're not sure what that banging sound is. Maybe someone was on the other side, smacking the silo with a sledgehammer. The way the silo falls is the coolest part. It's like when someone pretends to walk down a flight of stairs behind a low wall. The Fort Steuben Bridge stood for 84 long years. It spanned over the Ohio River, connecting the communities of Steubenville, Ohio, and Weirton, West Virginia. But on February 21st of 2012, it only took a few seconds to come crashing down. When it's slowed down frame by frame, you can see the charges detonate and explode as they move across the bridge. According to Bloomberg, the demo team wrapped the bridge in 13 pounds of detonating cord and 130 pounds of copper-coated linear charges. The heavy slabs of steel and concrete fell into the Ohio River. For a second, the smoke almost looks like the bridge's ghost rising to the heavens. The 1,600-foot bridge was supposed to fall back in 2009. The floor was rotting, and the lanes were too narrow. Of course, government delays got in the way, and the ghost bridge sat on death row for about 3 years. The demolition and cleanup cost about $2.3 million. You can see the workers hauling pieces from the river and cutting them up for disposal. Jerry Jones loves his Dallas Cowboys. He loves them so much that he spent about $875 million to build AT&T Stadium in the mid-2000s. The city of Arlington, Texas, chipped in another $325 million. The Cowboys used to play at Texas Stadium in Irving, Texas. Once Jerry moved the team, the city of Irving had little use for a pro football stadium. On April 11th of 2010, the Weir Brothers Demolition Company rigged the old stadium to blow. It is amazing to watch all those charges go off in perfect unison. You could line the explosions up with a metronome if you wanted to. It took nearly 3,000 pounds of explosives to bring down Texas Stadium. Thankfully, Jerry got all the memorabilia out before the blast. He squeezed every dime he could out of the old stadium. He sold the seats, the star-shaped signs, and pieces of the end zone turf. The Cowboys played 38 seasons at the old stadium. It only took about 30 seconds to come crumbling down. An 11-year-old boy named Casey Rogers had the pleasure of turning the demolition key. He won an essay contest sponsored by Kraft Foods and the city of Irving. Kraft Foods also paid $75,000 to sponsor the demolition, calling it the Cheddar Explosion. It was part of an extensive marketing campaign to sell more mac and cheese. You gotta love corporate America. The Savannah River Site, or SRS, was built in the 1950s to refine nuclear materials for use in atomic weapons. It covers 310 square miles near the Savannah River in South Carolina, hence the name. The U.S. Department of Energy owns and operates the entire facility. The site got in trouble in the 90s for violating the Clean Water Act. It turns out Reactor K was releasing scalding hot water into the Indian Grave Branch, a tributary of the Savannah River. To fix it, they built an $80 million cooling tower about 3,000 feet away. The idea was to pull water from the reactor and cool it before it could harm plants and animals. Cold War tensions cooled off, and the site didn't have use for Reactor K or the brand new cooling tower. Bees took up residence and turned the 450-foot structure into an $80 million beehive. Since that was a gross waste of taxpayer dollars, the DOE tore it down in 2010. Demo crews rigged the cooling tower with 3,860 charges, all fueled by another 1,300 pounds of nitroglycerin-based explosives. At the time, it was the second largest cooling tower demolition in the world. Within seconds, the $80 million beehive was reduced to 52 million pounds of concrete rubble. On June 27th of 2022, 12 years after the SRS cooling tower came down, demo crews blew up a similar structure in Hangzhou City, China. This one, however, had nothing to do with bees. The 492-foot tower simply stopped working in May of that year. Demolitions like this take years to happen in the United States. In China, it only takes a few months. What you're seeing is the largest cooling tower demolition in Chinese history. The city rigged the tower with lights to illuminate the explosion and commemorate the historic event. Slow-motion shots of the demolition show all the charges going off simultaneously. The smoke makes a wave-like shape around the tower before it crumbles to the ground. Look at how it folds in on itself. It almost looks like someone crushing an empty soda can. When the Iron Bridge Power Station opened up in 1969, it was among the largest of its kind in the UK. According to the BBC, it produced enough energy to power 750,000 homes. But in 2015, the plant stopped making energy. The new plan was to blow it up and build a small town. Locals wanted to save the iconic pink cooling towers. They had been part of the English skyline for decades, but didn't meet the strict criteria for historical protection. On December 6th of 2019, the pink towers collapsed for good. Like the Chinese tower, these English towers look like crushed soda cans before hitting the ground. Blowing them up marked a crucial milestone in a 27-month demolition project. Before they could even rig the towers, crews had to remove 16,000 tons of asbestos from inside. And because the towers were right next to a train track, the team had to be extra careful. The 4 towers measured 410 feet each. Because of their size and the number of explosives needed, nobody was allowed within 1,100 feet. That didn't stop locals from packing the nearby hills and roads. People sat with their cameras to say goodbye to their favorite local landmarks.
Guys, bakit hindi natin nakikita ito sa Pilipinas, yung ganitong klaseng demolition? Ang palagay ko yung cost ng yung pampasabog ay milyon-milyon, kaya hindi nila kaya na gawin ito sa atin sa Pilipinas. At saka dapat expert talagang gumawa nito, kasi kunting mali mo lang malaking disaster ang mangyayari. Kaya tuloy natin guys, let's go.
Mighty Marysville. Instead, they wanted to build hotels, retail stores, a marina, and some bike trails. First things first, the old power plant had to go. A group of Canadians watched the demolition from across the St. Clair River. But let's be honest, the person driving by on the boat had the best seat in the house. The dust cloud stretches for hundreds of feet in every direction. It almost crosses the border into Canada. Slowed down, the explosions look like surges of electricity shooting across the support beams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those surges go by. You can just barely see the support beams buckling under the weight. Watching the mighty Marysville fall is like saying goodbye to a bygone era of energy production. As of 2023, there are only 224 active coal-fired plants left in the United States. Home to over 630,000 people, Glasgow is the most populous city in Scotland. They were also home to the tallest residential buildings in Europe. The Red Road Flats were 8 massive apartment buildings built in the 1960s. In their prime, they were capable of housing 4,700 people. In October of 2015, Glasgow decided to blow them up. As you can see, 2 of the stubborn towers refused to fall during the demo. According to the BBC, the demolition contractor noticed some discrepancies between the old construction records and the steel size they actually used. So, they decided to err on the side of caution instead of blowing it sky high. The Red Road Flats were the tallest buildings in Glasgow. 6 of the 8 towers topped 292 feet. If you lived on the 30th floor, you literally towered over everyone else in the city. Their reputation declined through the 70s. Asbestos and gang violence drove people away. Drugs littered the halls, and insufficient amenities made life pretty difficult. Things kept getting worse, so the Scottish government decided it was time for the towers to go. The Munmora Power Station was a massive coal-fired power plant north of Sydney, Australia. It was built in the 1960s and supplied power in eastern New South Wales. In July of 2012, the power station's owner, Delta Electricity, announced that they were closing the plant after 45 years. Energy demand was falling, and parts of the facility needed costly repairs. We're talking like $400 million worth of repairs. It was cheaper to tear it down and sell the 500 acres of land. So, that's exactly what they did. Those massive chimney stacks were the first big pieces to get torn down. They measured just over 508 feet tall. Both contained 6,500 tons of concrete. Just look at what happens when all that weight comes crashing down. According to Liberty Industrial, the demolition company that tore down the facility, the Munmora Power Station project was among the largest demolitions in Australian history. Iowa State University is among the most famous colleges in the United States. Located about 30 minutes north of Des Moines, the school is famous for being the birthplace of digital electronic computing. They also played a crucial role in the Manhattan Project during World War II. Some of the brightest minds in ISU history likely lived in either Storm or Knapp Hall. Storm and Knapp were two student housing complexes built in the mid-1960s. Decades passed, and maintaining the historic towers was getting too expensive. In July of 2005, they decided to tear them both down. Both dorms could house 600 people each. ISU students at the time loved the modern living features. They had lounges, carpeted hallways, and elevators. College students probably take these things for granted now, but in 1966, it was a pretty big deal. For example, in 1970, Knapp Hall became the first co-ed dorm on ISU campus. The times were changing. According to Charles Fredrickson, a former director at the ISU Residence Department, the shift to co-ed dorms offered students a realistic living experience. The demolition date drew a massive crowd of past and present students. When Knapp went up in 1966, it was considered among the top residence halls in the country. As time passed, students needed more amenities. You know, like high-speed internet. Knapp and Storm couldn't keep up. On Christmas Day of 2012, demolition crews prepared to tear down the Haihong Development Building in Haikou, China. They rigged the charges, got a safe distance back, and watched the deteriorating building come crashing down. Just look at all that dust and debris. Hopefully, the people living in the nearby apartments remembered to keep their windows closed. We're not sure why Haikou City decided to tear this building down. China's had a turbulent history with unfinished high-rise projects in recent years. For example, a company called Evergrande used to be one of China's biggest builders. Then they fell over $300 billion in debt and had to tear down many unfinished buildings. In the heart of Detroit, Michigan, once stood the J.L. Hudson department store, one of the most iconic stores in the world. Construction started in 1911 and wasn't fully completed until 1946. Nonetheless, it became increasingly popular over time thanks in part to its unbelievable size. The building spanned 2.1 million square feet, with 32 floors and a height of 410 feet. To give you an idea, it was about 49 acres in size. Over 200 departments were featured, with over 600,000 items for sale sourced from 16,000 suppliers. To serve the throngs of visitors arriving daily, 12,000 workers were employed. At its zenith, the store served 100,000 customers every day. In 1954, Hudson's had a revenue of more than $163 million, equivalent to $1.28 billion in today's money. The store's fortunes began to decline in the late 1950s and early 1960s as the city's population shrank due to the rise of suburbs and the freeway network. Shopping centers and other alternative retail sites opened, luring customers away. After more than 90 years in operation, the chain finally shut its doors in 1983. For the next 15 years, the abandoned structure remained a vacant shell, a haunting reminder of a bygone era. However, in 1998, the city of Detroit finally decided to demolish the building to make way for a new development. The demolition was carried out by Controlled Demolition Incorporated, who used over 4,000 explosive charges to bring down the massive structure. The implosion was a marvel of modern engineering, with the building collapsing in just 18 seconds in a cloud of dust and debris. The demolition of J.L. Hudson's was a bittersweet moment for many Detroiters. While the buildings had long been an eyesore and a reminder of the city's decline, it was also a symbol of the city's rich history and past glory. However, others saw the demolition as a necessary step towards revitalizing the city and creating a brighter future. Today, the land is home to the Hudson Site Development, a mixed-use building set to complete in 2024. Once it's done, it'll be the second tallest building in the city at 685 feet, or 208 meters. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another one just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen.
Guys, napakagaling, di ba? Napakabilis ng demolition. Instead na abutin ka ng buwan-buwan o kaya taon-taon sa pag-demolish ng malaking building, sa ang pagplano maybe buwan, tapos yung pagpasabog talaga ng building, ano lang, ang 1 minute to let's say 5 minutes, hindi nga abutin siguro. Kaya kaso lang ang question dito yung budget. Kasi pag nagpasabog ka ng ganito kalaking building, kailangan mo ng maybe tuniladang pasabog. So mahal ang budget ng pampasabog, pero mabilis naman. Yung sa ibang country, especially sa US, kaya naman nila gumastos ng million dollars. Kasi nababawi rin nila pag nagpatayo sila ng commercial building, mga apartments, hotels. So nababawi nila in the long run yung gagastusin nilang million na pambili ng pampasabog. Dito na lang natin tatapusin yung video na ito. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagsama, sa inyong panonood. By the way, kung bago pa lang po kayo sa aking YouTube channel, please pag-support, please like this video. Pag-subscribe po yung mga hindi pa nakasubscribe sa YouTube channel ko. At pag-share na rin po sa inyong mga friends and families. Paki-comment na lang po, importante sa akin yun. At paki-hit na rin yung notification bell para updated kayo sa aking susunod na video. Salamat po. Bye for now. God bless us all. Thank you.